All right, welcome everybody to this edition of Advanced Webinars. This is a QuickBooks Online update, Q1, Q2 2021 update. Today's April 22nd, and the last time I did an update like this via a free webinar was, I believe, about 5 months ago. So this update was long overdue. There's a whole bunch of new things that were added and improved and tweaked in QuickBooks Online. And that will be our area of focus. We'll be talking about that. If you want to download the slides, check out the link to download the Google Slides, the same slides that I'm working on. You can just go in the chat section and I copy and pasted that link in there. You can just click on that and you'll be able to follow the slides along, download them, print them, whatever it happens to be. The link to the slide is also physically on the slide, so you visually see it on the top right. Highlighted in yellow, but go in the chat box and click there so you don't have to type anything manually. All right, so my name is Hector Garcia. This webinar will be anywhere between 90 minutes to 100 minutes. We're going to cover a whole bunch of topics. First, we'll talk about some of the webinars and programs, more like training stuff and news in the QuickBooks world for 2021. Then we'll talk about the new chart of accounts experience. This is a unique concept that's only available in QuickBooks Online, sole proprietors, service-based companies that don't have an accountant only. You'll see, we'll talk about that. It's a very interesting thing that Intuit is doing. I think it's more of a test, and I'm going to show you what the experience looks like, and then you'll be the judge on how much you like that, because it is likely that if it's successful, it will be what the new universal chart of accounts experience across the board will be like. Then we'll talk about the QBO updates that affect all versions, improvements in bank feeds, improvements in the search box, improvements or the addition of QuickBooks Cash as a product, the cash flow planner, auto pay on recurring invoices, the new timesheet screens beta, which I hate, and I'll explain why once we get to it. We'll talk about the improved QuickBooks Online to QuickBooks Desktop experience, the conversion experience. This is to go down to desktop, not desktop to online, online to desktop. We'll talk about some of the limits that they added to tags, which made sense. We kind of saw that coming. And we'll talk about the custom summary report, which is technically the only thing here that's not news at all, but I always like to mention it because it's a really valuable resource and people don't know about it, and they removed it from the reports list. So we'll discuss that. Then I'll talk a little bit about Melio, the bill pay platform that Intuit has seemed to go all in on new customers, and looks like they're leaving behind Bill.com for bill pay integration. So we'll talk about what the green Melio and the purple Melio and what that stuff means briefly. Then we'll move on to QuickBooks Online updates that are more specific to QuickBooks Online Advanced. As you know, if you're an avid QuickBooks user, you know that Intuit puts most of their new feature money in QuickBooks Online Advanced. So we'll talk about that. There's some new premium apps that they've tagged. We'll discuss what those are. There's Google Sheet integration for data import. There's new user roles that they're updating that area. New workflow reminders for estimate type of transactions. There's an expansion to custom fields and some additions in the accountant edition on the month-end review. So we're going to be covering a lot of topics today. This is probably the most jam-packed webinar on QuickBooks Online updates that you will ever see, possibly, mostly because it took me so long to get back to you guys on an update. I want to do quarterly updates. That's kind of what I would like to do. But right now, what we have scheduled is in October, I'm going to do another update. So it's going to be about 6 months from now, mostly because in summer, I'm going to be traveling. So you're going to get this webinar with all these updates, and then a webinar in 6 months, and hopefully there'll be as many updates. So it'll be a big webinar. And then I will move into maybe more of a quarterly cadence for these free webinars in 2022. We'll see how it moves. So if you're watching this in YouTube recorded afterwards, that's the link to register for the webinars that are upcoming. Now I'll briefly talk about upcoming paid webinars that I'm involved in. So we have about 100 people that have signed up for the QBO construction and project-based business webinars. We've done 3 out of 6 episodes. So we got 3 episodes left, one in May, one in June, one in August. If you're watching this after the fact, you can sign up for the program and watch all the recordings. So far, as of the date of this webinar, we've done 3 and there's 3 upcoming. If you purchase it now or later, whenever you want to, you have access to all 6. And that's focused on construction industry for using QuickBooks Online. I also have an upcoming paid webinar, which is a big update to my bank feeds and bank reconciliation course. This is a course that I last updated last year. It's a course I lowered the price to $100 just because a lot of this content is available on YouTube, but the way I teach it, and I give you copies of the bank statements and the documents that I'm using so you can practice yourself. You can access that. The big update is going to be tomorrow, April 23rd at 1 p.m. So only for the people that sign up and paid for the webinar in the past. And if you never bought it before, you can buy it and have access to it. The link is down there. If you are watching this after the 23rd, you'll be able to watch the recording for the same price. So I'll be doing the webinar in 2 parts. First, we'll talk about mastering bank feeds, categorizing expenses, bank rules. We're going to go into every single button that QuickBooks Online has and tell you my take on how I use that and how I speed up my data entry process. And the second part will be bank reconciliations, credit card reconciliations. We'll be talking about transfers between accounts, all the things that cause confusion in the reconciliations, fixing reconciliation discrepancies. So it's going to be a great webinar. I think it's going to be a great value. It's very specific to just banking and reconciliation. So if you bought this before, you have access to it. You've already received an email with access to it. If you never bought it before, then you'll be able to buy it. The link is below. Again, once I put the recording up in YouTube, all the links will be in the description, and everybody that attended this live or missed it will get a link to all that stuff. There's also an upcoming paid workshop in November. I don't have any details about it yet. I'm writing the content now. This is for accounting professionals wanting to learn how to give better advice or how to establish an advisory services practice. We're going to do a big immersive workshop so I can walk a couple of people. This is not going to be cheap, so it'll be small groups, walk people on how they can enhance their practice with advisory services. I have nothing to sell to you right now. The details will be coming after the end of the extension tax season. Okay, so that's it for the promoting the stuff that I'm working on. Now, if you're a QuickBooks Pro Advisor, if you're a QuickBooks Advanced Pro Advisor, be aware that there is a new updated recertification, and you have until June 30th to do it. So if you're an Advanced QuickBooks Pro Advisor, you can take the recertification by June 30th, and you can keep your advanced certification. There's a live webinar starting in May, and I think there's 2 in May. The link is on the slides. If you want to register for that webinar, it will prep you for the recertification exam. Again, for people that already are QuickBooks Pro Advisors, they're advanced certified, and they want to recertify so they can maintain their advanced certification, which is a more advanced certification. So make sure to check that out and register for the webinar if you want to prepare for that exam. Now, Intuit, a couple of months ago, they released the new advice specialty courses on advisory, and it's a set of, I'll probably say about 12 to 13 hours worth of training. It's recorded by a couple of QuickBooks consultants and accountants. I'm one of them. I actually recorded, I think, 2 of the sessions that are there, and that's available inside of the QuickBooks Pro Advisor training area. All right, so that should be good enough for the Pro Advisor information. Now, some of the big news that came, I believe, is around February of 2021, is Intuit acquired a company called OneSaas. OneSaas is an integrator. Basically, it's an app that took data from one area and synced it into QuickBooks. OneSaas is focused on e-commerce, and the really cool thing about Intuit buying OneSaas is you used to pay for OneSaas. So again, you used to pay for OneSaas, and now it's going to be free for QuickBooks users. So for the time being, I've tested it with a couple of these, and I didn't pay anything for OneSaas, and it's an excellent connector. So if you got clients with e-commerce, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, Shopify, eBay, and you want to sync it into QuickBooks, and you're not using a multi-channel tool like WebGility, you want to check out the the newly acquired OneSaas tools that are available in the App Store. All you have to do is search for OneSaas, and that would be in there. Now, the one that I like to point out is because of how often it happens where you got Shopify people wanting to connect to QuickBooks Online. The OneSaas Shopify app, I started using it with a client. It's fantastic. Okay, it gives you tons of flexibility. You can choose how the orders come into QuickBooks. So if you want them to come as invoices or sales receipts, you got total flexibility on that. You get to choose how the payments come in. So if they pay you via PayPal or via Stripe or whatever system they use to pay you, you can choose in the settings which accounts they're going to be mapped to. So for OneSaas, I think it's really, really valuable that you check them out, especially now that you don't have to pay for the app anytime that it comes to syncing QuickBooks with some sort of e-commerce platform. Okay. All right. So let's move into the live demo where we're going to open up QuickBooks and kind of talk about this. Let's talk about the new chart of accounts experience. I'm going to go through the slides first, and then I'll open up QuickBooks Online and show you. Now, if somebody creates a new account in QuickBooks Online now, and they pick service-based, and or they don't pick that they sell products, just we're service-based, and it's a sole proprietor. So this sequence has to happen exactly, again, as of April 22nd, the day I'm recording this. If somebody creates a new account and they're sole proprietor and they say that they're service-based, they're going to get the new chart of accounts experience, okay? The other thing I like to add is when they ask them whether they are the owner or the accountant, if they select the accountant, they will not see the new chart of accounts experience. Long story short, what Intuit is trying to do is they're trying to make the life easier for the non-accountant QuickBooks users to navigate chart of accounts. I suspect, and this is pure speculation, that if Intuit has done surveys to their customers about what is the most difficult thing about accounting, or where do you get stuck with QuickBooks, or where do you think you need the most help, or maybe the most support calls, whatever it is, it's probably around chart of accounts. So Intuit naturally is going to look for ways to increase satisfaction on non-accountant users in the chart of account experience, and they're choosing a particular segment of the new customers, again, sole proprietors, service-based, to test this in. Anyway, the first thing you will notice with the new chart of accounts experience is you will not have the ability to create new accounts from the chart of accounts screen. This is very, very shocking. Of course, if you're an accountant and you look at that, you're going to freak out immediately, and I get it. Okay, but that they've chosen to do this during the test. They chosen to do this. So they will not give a new accounts button to the user in the chart of accounts. And that could create some confusion when it comes to creating loans and bank accounts and credit cards. I'm assuming that Intuit is counting on them or connecting the bank and doing the new account creation experience from bank feeds. But that is the most shocking thing I would tell you that I felt when I first kind of saw this new chart of accounts experience. Now, the other thing that's pretty cool is they have a different chart of accounts. It's a chart of accounts that you've never seen in QuickBooks Online before. I exported that chart of accounts. I put it up in a spreadsheet. So just in case you want to explore the chart of accounts by itself, I went ahead and I put it available for you just in case you don't have any files to look at this new chart of accounts experience. There's just a spreadsheet of what the new chart of accounts looks like. A couple of things that I like and I think they're worth mentioning. Again, this is what you get with my webinars. You get tons of sort of insight around, the way I perceive these things, right? So a couple of things that I like or that I find interesting is it creates a long-term office equipment asset account and a couple of sub-accounts, okay? Computers, copiers, custom software, furniture, phones. Again, something we've never seen in a default chart of accounts in QuickBooks Online before. The other thing that you're going to find pretty interesting is it creates a couple of equity accounts. It creates a personal expenses equity accounts with some subcategories like federal taxes, personal retirement plans, state taxes. Again, this is within the context of a sole proprietor. Then it has personal health care, and you have HSA and health insurance premiums. So it automatically creates those personal expense, taxes, retirement accounts, and health insurance accounts as an equity. That way, we're hoping that it avoids the customer creating this in the profit and loss. The other thing you'll find pretty interesting as well is we're going to scroll down to the other expenses, We're going to scroll down to other expenses. So here where it says other expenses, it creates a home office expense and home utilities, homeowner rental insurance, mortgage interest, property taxes, and rent. And it puts it under other expense because it's making the assumption that some accountant or something will look at that in detail and maybe make adjustments for tax. Same thing for vehicle expenses. It puts it under other expense. Again, it separates it from the regular P&L and then all the sub-accounts for vehicle expenses. Again, something that you've never seen as a default chart of accounts from QuickBooks before. So my first observation about this is pretty neat. I like it. Let me go back into open up QuickBooks here. I like it. I think it's a really interesting approach. Again, and I think that if they move into this for the regular chart of accounts user experience, I like having that up front. So again, there's a spreadsheet on the slides, so you can download it and you can look at it and you can kind of see the chart of accounts. And by the way, if you download the spreadsheet, you could even import the chart of accounts into a new file that maybe doesn't have this new experience up front. The other thing that's really worth pointing out is there's this thing called Smart Search. I actually don't know what the official name is, but it's a new thing that you will see. It's a little icon that looks like an atom or something like that, which is sort of suggesting that QuickBooks is suggesting things for you, is using artificial intelligence technology or whatever. And what's really cool about this is you can type anything random in there and QuickBooks will suggest the closest approximation to it. For example, when I type meals, it suggested travel meals, meals with clients, and entertainment with clients. Notice the word entertainment with clients doesn't have the word meals in it. So it's kind of interesting process. And for example, when I search job, it suggested supplies and materials, subcontractor expense, equipment rental. So you see a concept there that you can search things that are not textually in your chart of accounts and it will suggest things for you. Let me go ahead and log in so I can show you so you can see exactly what this looks like, because I know I already told you the conditions in which you would see this. Right now, there isn't a whole lot of customers that have access to it, but I think it's valuable that you kind of see the process firsthand. So for example, I'm in my bank feeds like normal, okay? And I'm gonna go and categorize an expense account. So here where it says categories, when you click on the drop-down menu, you see it looks a lot different than before. I'm gonna select a different transaction. Let me pick, let's pick this FPL direct debit, okay? So I'm gonna click on the drop-down menu and QuickBooks suggested utilities, which is actually accurate. But when I do my search, I can put light, okay? So when I type light, it automatically suggests utilities. You see kind of the concept. So you can type anything random and it'll suggest something. I'm gonna type the word connection, for example. So I write the word connection and it suggested utilities, internet services, disposal. You see that? I'm gonna type the word, let's say, penalty. Okay, penalty, okay, nothing. Okay, so I type the word penalty and it gives me a couple of suggestions. Short-term business loans, taxes paid, business license, interest paid, business loan interest. So you see, it's really, really interesting, right? This approach that they're doing. As I mentioned before, I type the word job and it suggests supplies and materials, general business expenses, uniforms. So it actually tries to guess what is it that you're trying to do. Now, all these accounts are in the chart of accounts, but if you want to add more categories, remember I mentioned earlier that there will not be, you won't have the ability to create new accounts when you're in the chart of accounts screen. However, you will have the ability to create new accounts here, right? From this screen. So we're going to click on C and add more categories. And you're going to see this drawer appear on the right-hand side. And then you're going to get a full search box for the chart of accounts. This search box works the same way as the inline. So if I type the word job, in this search box, it will only search actual accounts that exist. So if I type the word contractor, let's see, contractor, it would actually show me right here. Contract labor, contributions. I actually just type CONTR. So I type CONTR, this searches only on actual accounts in your chart of accounts, and it groups them in sort of ways that are friendly to the user. So you're going to see all the expenses grouped together and a little explanation of what expenses mean. And then you see owner investments or equity, and it says here a little explanation about that. So you see how this is pretty interesting, how the way it organizes the chart of accounts, again, trying to make it as simple as possible for the layman. And this is why this is not available for people that say they are an accountant or from the accountant's side, because this is supposed to be a non-accountant friendly experience. And who knows what they're going to do with this moving forward. Okay. So that's a couple of things. Now, if I need to create a new account, okay, I can click on the new button. And again, this is going to be the only place where you can create a new account with this new experience. Who knows if they add that into the chart of accounts later. Right now, it's not. And here you would create your new category. So let's say we're going to call it, let's call this one communications cost or something like that. Again, I'm making things up. And then under the sub account or the category, this is where you get this drop down that groups them based on type, right? And then I can click on, let's say, expenses. And then under expenses, you get sort of like a mini chart of accounts under expenses. And then I can pick, let's say, utilities, right? And this is what the new process for creating accounts and sub accounts looks like. And then you enter your description, which is just a description that goes into the chart of accounts. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and click on save, and there it is. It creates the account. You will see that while the screen is highlighted, it won't show you the full path. Okay, this is different than before. Before you would see the full path. You see utilities, column, and the sub account. If I click away from it, again, it still does that. If I click on the drop down menu, I can see that there's a subcategory. It's visual when you click on it, but you don't get the traditional account, column, sub account. Again, this is how Intuit is thinking about doing the new chart of accounts experience, mostly for new users. Other thing I like to show you is I'm gonna type the word monkey, okay? And obviously, for some reason, monkey showed up vehicle expenses, maybe because of the word monkey wrench, right? So this is kind of interesting concept, right? Like, wait, monkey, why are you showing me this example? Okay, I'm actually going to go into the chart of accounts. I'm going to go into the chart of accounts here, and I'm going to pull up this new account I created called communications cost. I'm going to edit it, and then I'm going to put in the description, I'm going to put bear monkey. Okay, I know this is nonsense, but I'm using nonsense to illustrate the point. I'm typing bear monkey in the description. I'm going to click save and close. And now I'm going to go back into my banking. I'll pick one of these accounts. And then here in the category, I'm going to type monkey. Okay, it was working before, so now maybe I'm a little bit embarrassed by it. Let me put bear. Okay, it seemed to have been working before. Maybe it's not right now, but it would also, it's supposed to also search in the description of the accounts. Right now, it ended up not working, but good. Now you know that it doesn't work 100% of the time. So this smart search is kind of a fluid thing. So something to think about. Now I'm going to type the word petroleum. Okay, petroleum is a word that we don't use in the US to describe. Actually, a good suggestion. Let me refresh first before I do the monkey thing again. Maybe that was a good suggestion by Joyce, who's telling me, hey, why don't you try refreshing? It's great catch there. Let me try that again. Let's see if it works now. So let's see if I type the word monkey. Okay, no, it didn't work this time. Okay, well, that's a good try. We'll try it anyway. Maybe log out, log back in, who knows? But I think I was showing something else, and I completely lost track of the other thing I was going to show you when it comes to categorizing. Okay, anyway, no big deal. So that's the new chart of accounts experience. I think it's enough to get you to think about, oh yeah, petroleum. Yeah, so let me go back to that. So I know that in the UK, for example, when they talk about gas or gasoline or fuel, they use the word petroleum or petrol. So I just wanted to kind of just show you the concept, right? That I don't know how they do this. I don't know if they have a library of random words. I don't know if they go to Google and figure out what's similar, But I find this sort of kind of revolutionary, honestly, because I know a lot of customers start typing random things in there, and that leads them to create new accounts. And hopefully, when somebody types something random and QuickBooks can catch that they really mean something else, that they pick a real account instead of creating a new one. And then the new account creation, it's kind of cumbersome, which I like because you have to click on C, then you have to click on a category, then you have to click on a category. So you see what I mean? You have to go through several steps to create the new account. And also because the way it walks you through the new account creation, it doesn't go straight to expense category like it normally does, or straight to a bank account like it normally does. It takes you to this really easy to kind of see hierarchy where you see income, expenses, and any of them that you click on, it kind of spreads it up and opens it. And I think it makes it really easy for you to visualize your way into the chart of accounts. Again, big kudos to them. I think that this was executed flawlessly. I think that the description thing wasn't working as well as I thought it would, but it's something that they will probably add pretty soon or get it to work correctly, because searching in the description of the account, it's the next logical thing that should be working. So wanted to mention that you might be seeing this across all QuickBooks files at some point, but right now it's only available to new accounts, sole proprietor, non-accountant that are service-based only. So there's going to be a small subgroup of clients that use this. They'll probably get some feedback, and then from there, probably in the next couple of months, you're going to see parts of this or this whole thing be the new chart of accounts experience. A couple of things I want to point out. I went in there and I tested. It's not in every screen. So it is on the banking screen. It is on the new account creation screen. But when you create a new product, you still get the old chart of accounts list, drop down chart of account list, not the smart search or anything like that. And when you're in the check register, you also get the old chart of accounts list. So this might be in purpose, so you still get a little bit of both, or it might be a fluke where they haven't finished adding the experience throughout everywhere inside QuickBooks. In my humble opinion, especially if we got anybody from QuickBooks watching, is if you are going to change the chart of accounts experience, you got to change it across every single screen in QuickBooks where you're dealing with chart of accounts. Because if you're going to change the terminology to categories or change the way people search their chart of accounts and they get used to this new way, something else, something different will be confusing. Accountants normally don't have issues dealing with that, but something to think about. So you're getting this first, folks. You kind of getting idea of what this is going to look like. At some point, this is going to be the standard. Now, look, for example, when I type the word mortgage, it suggested mortgage interest, mortgage interest paid, mortgage liabilities. But what I like about this is that it breaks it down by category. So when someone is about to pay a mortgage, this might be a better way to organize it. And if they end up putting something in home office mortgage, it's going to be much easier to find and correct and fix by an accountant that if it goes into some interest account or some random account. So something to think about. I think Intuit did a fabulous job. Honestly, they did a fabulous job with that. Okay. With that said, let me just answer somebody asked me a question. Oh, they're asking if this is available in all versions. So again, right now, this is a test. It's a beta. So it doesn't matter whether they have Simple Start, Advanced, or Plus. It's based on whether they selected sole proprietor and service based. Eventually, they're going to add it to more and more until it basically encompasses the entire QuickBooks Online experience. Okay, so let's move on to QBO features across all versions. We'll talk about banking features. Now, one thing I mentioned, a couple of these banking features are technically old news, but some people still don't know about them. I'm seeing people ask about these things in the chat rooms and the forums. So I'm going to go through all the things that are available in the new updated bank feed screen, which was updated, I believe, summer of 2020. And they've been adding little things. I'm going to show you. I guarantee you, for every single person, I'm going to show you at least one thing that you didn't know about. Wells Fargo was added to the automatic bank statement download bank list. There's about 3,000 banks. There's a link in the slides. If you want to click on that link, it tells you all the banks that connect with QuickBooks. and automatically download the statement inside QuickBooks Online. It's a superb experience. It's awesome. So if you're working with a bank that's in this list, and Wells Fargo, I think Wells Fargo's not on this list, is the only new one. They probably added some new ones, but it's the one that's worth highlighting. Is a big bank that was added to it. So if you see the button that says View Statement, that means your bank can send the physical PDF to QuickBooks and you can see the statement in there. So it kind of saves a step from having to go into the bank and downloading the statement manually, or having a paper, or having the paper statement on the mail or whatever, right? So I love it. I wish it was done much earlier. They announced this like 3 years ago in QuickBooks Connect, and they're still struggling to get all the banks on board to send. I'm sure there's a security issue, but hey, Bank of America and Wells Fargo are up there. Great. Now we'd love to see Chase next. Okay. A couple other things worth mentioning too. You can date filter your bank feeds. So if you want to focus on only working on a particular date range, you can do that. You can also only filter by specific statuses. So transactions that have been matched, have been recognized, where the rule has been applied, missing a payee. I love that one, right? I want to know what transactions are missing a payee so I can focus on that. I can collapse the accounts and I can export them to Excel. There's a particular reason why I recommend exporting to Excel, and I'll recommend that briefly. I'll show you that in a second. I'm going to go ahead and switch companies. And some of you may have seen a video where I can explain this, but if you haven't, get ready to see something really, really interesting. Let me just find my company here. Okay, I'm gonna log into this company who I think I connected a bank to it, and I'm gonna show you why the bank feeds Excel export is valuable. Now I'm gonna go out of the limb here that Intuit really didn't know what they were doing when they added the export, and I'm about to tell you and tell them why it was awesome that they added the export. So when you're in the bank feed screen, this is before I enter a transaction into QuickBooks, I have the ability to export into Excel my list of downloaded transactions, not entered into QuickBooks, not matched, the ones that are downloaded for review pending to be categorized. Okay, so kind of follow me on this one. Now, if you notice here, I have none of them have a payee, right? It's actually a brand new account. If I click on any of these and look at my drop down for my payee, I'm going to type here Hot Chicks. By the way, that's a restaurant, not something improper. That's a restaurant, fried chicken restaurant called Hot Chicks. It's not in my chart of accounts. So because it's not in my chart of accounts, I have to go in there and I have to create the account manually each time. You can do some shortcuts like taking what's in the memo, copy and pasting it into vendor, and then clicking on add, and then clicking on save, and that will save you some time in the process, but it won't be nearly as fast as exporting that and importing a brand new vendor list. So let me show you. If you haven't seen this before, prepare to be utterly mind blown. Okay, so I don't have any vendors in my bank feeds. A lot of these cleaned up vendors from QuickBooks could be useful, and I can load them into my vendor list. So I'm going to click on the export to Excel. I'm going to open that up just so you can see what that looks like. So I'm going to open up in Excel right here. So basically, I got a big spreadsheet that looks identical to my list of transactions that I'm about to categorize. Then all I have to do here is I delete the dates, I delete everything else, and I just simply leave my list of vendors. That's it. That's simple. Then in Excel, okay, just want to make sure. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Can you see my Excel screen? Sorry, with live webinars, you never know when people can't see the Excel. Yeah, okay. So what I did was, and let me do that. Let me just do that again. Right? Let's not miss a step here. So I clicked on export to Excel. My Excel was downloaded right here into my folder. I'm gonna drag it here from my other screen. I'm gonna zoom in to, let's say, 200%. And what I'm gonna do it here in Excel is I'm gonna delete the dates and delete everything else that's not the description. So basically, I'm gonna get a list of vendors that QuickBooks cleaned up for me. Now, they're not all gonna be perfect, We know that happens, no big deal. In Excel, what you can do is you can delete the duplicates. So you can click here where it says remove duplicates, an Excel function. And now you're gonna get a list of approximately 36 new vendors. I'm gonna go ahead and save that. I'll save it into my desktop. I wish there was that I didn't have to export to Excel and do this. But what I like about this is I can clean it in Excel prior to importing. Then I'm gonna click on the gear menu, and then I'm gonna click on import data. Some of you are looking at this and going, oh man, I know exactly what you're getting at. I'm gonna click on vendors, and I'm gonna click on browse. Okay, I'm gonna pick that export where I cleaned up all the vendors, remove the duplicates, all that stuff. Click on next, and then pick my field. Click on next. All I'm bringing in is the vendor names. That's it. And then click on import. Okay. So what I did is I loaded my vendor list with a new list of vendors. Yes, it has the potential of duplicating vendors if they're slightly different. But check this out. I went back into my bank feeds, and all my transactions now have a payee attached next to it. If that doesn't make you excited, you have no soul. If that doesn't blow your mind, you got no soul. And you're probably not an accountant. So maybe if you're not an accountant, you might have a soul. But this stuff is really, really awesome because that is going to systematically reduce the amount of work that you have to do to create each vendor. Now, it would be awesome for there to be a button here that says create vendors automatically and open up a screen and give you kind of a checkbox that says, hey, would you like to add these vendors, yes or no? And you can choose from there. I would love not to have to go into Excel and do this, but I mean, for most people exporting to Excel, that took nothing. Okay, that took nothing. So look at that, all in one shot. Now, does that guarantee that QuickBooks will now categorize my things correctly? No, it doesn't guarantee that. It doesn't. But at least I got my payees in there. So if I got my payees in there, and let's say I categorize this wrong, which could happen, there's one little option that I think is really valuable. Here in the gear menu on the right, there's a little box that says copy bank detail to memo. This has been here for a long time. This is not new. This is not novel. But some people uncheck that by mistake. It is by default checked now, which is great. They added that like a year ago, where it's default checked. But if that's unchecked, you're not going to get the original payee name in the memo. You're going to get a blank memo. You don't want that. I don't think anybody wants that. So what you do want is you want this copy bank detail to memo option. So the original vendor name comes into the memo. And if the payee was by mistake selected the wrong payee or whatever, you could always go back and check into that. So I'll show you. I'm going to select all in one shot, and I'm going to accept what QuickBooks did for me. So QuickBooks picked a bunch of categories for me. Some of them could be wrong. Who knows? Who cares? I got payees in there. That's what I want. So I'm going to go to accept here. And let me just accept them all 200 transactions. So, okay, I'm going to close this for a second. And I'm going to click here and do 300. And then I'm going to accept them all. Now, one thing that's pretty interesting about this, as I mentioned earlier, actually, I'm going to uncheck that. Here it says transactions. See, you can get to choose what type, the ones that have already been categorized, the ones that hasn't. So I'm going to pick the ones that have been recognized, and I'm going to select all and click on accept. Now, remember the copy and paste of the new vendors? That wasn't perfect. It didn't recognize all, but the ones that didn't recognize, for whatever reason, let's just go back here and the ones that didn't recognize, the vendor should have been created. The problem is when you saw me do the export, I exported the first 50. So what you need to do, and this by mistake, I should have done this before, is you're going to click here on 300 and then do the export with the 300 because it obviously didn't catch some of them. So let me do that here real quick since it's such a quick process anyway. So I'm going to delete the dates, delete everything else. I'm going to select my description and remove the duplicates. Okay. I'm going to save that again. Okay. And I'm going to go back into the gear menu, click on import data, click on vendors. Some of the vendors are going to be duplicates and it'll just give me an error and I'll ignore the error. No big deal. I'm going to click on my next one which is the one I just did. Click next, select the field. Again, I'm just repeating the same thing I showed you before. Click on import. It's going to import some of them and it'll give me an error for duplicates, and that's okay, right? So whatever was duplicated, I can just close, no big deal. Go back into my bank feeds. And now, because I exported more, now you see more things. More things here are being recognized. Okay, so I can filter these right here by missing payee and customer. And I can now see only the ones that are missing the payee. Why were these missing payee? Well, QuickBooks assumed it's a transfer or whatever. So I'm just going to manually fix those. Notice that my vendor is already in there because I imported. And then I put whatever category go. So yeah, it's not going to be perfect. It is going to, some are going to send them to on category to a transfer. And the ones that they think is a transfer, those are the ones that are not going to catch. But we'll just fix those. And I'm just going to go ahead and fix 3 of them just so I can show you. And then I'm going to go to categorize. I sure wish that you could turn off this transfer feature where it just puts everything into transfer automatically. Just a man can dream, I guess. Okay, and then we'll click on add. So that all my transactions that were missing payee were added. And now I can get rid of that filter. I'm going to select them all. Again, I'm accepting their categories as is. I'm going to click on accept. And everything from bank feeds has been entered. And everything has been entered with a payee. Again, that's a really important thing. With the bank details in the memo. All these things were done simultaneously. Some of these are transfers, payments to the credit card. That's why those didn't enter. We'll ignore those for now. I'm going to go ahead and run a report real quick and go to a profit and loss. And then we're going to see a bunch of things being posted into uncategorized expense naturally. So I'm going to click on that dollar amount, and everything that was entered randomly from the bank has a payee. So the value of having the payee is I can group these by vendor. I can group them by payee in this case. Okay, where's my vendor? And now I can have them organized. So anything that's uncategorized at least has a vendor, a logical vendor in there, has the original memo. It makes things so much easier to reclassify, because when I go to reclassify, since everything has a vendor, I can just go on here and type uncategorized. Okay, come in here and go to McDonald's. Okay, I got all my McDonald's with vendors. Let me click on find transactions. It happens to be one, but then I will click select all, reclassify, put this into meals or whatever it happens to be. So much value on making sure that that payee is in there. And I think that although this might not be all new to people, just the combination of tools is something that a lot of people don't use. And this is the type of stuff that I talk about in my bank feeds, bank reconciliations course. I go really deep into all these tools and techniques that will significantly save you time. But I wanted to mention those. Those are worth mentioning. Then we have this slide that kind of has a list of all the things that are in that settings screen, an explanation of what everyone is. Again, we go through all this in our bank feeds, downloaded transactions, bank reconciliations course, but you have the slides for reference. Okay, one thing I wanted to add, new things that were added into the rules. There's a new append a memo to the rule, and I've on my previous webinar I talked about this, but it wasn't working. But now it is working. So now it's finally working. So one of the good things about this webinar is we get to show Intuit was broken, and they go back and go, yeah, you're right. They should have fixed it. So they finally fixed it. So when you go create a new rule, anything you add in the memo, if you click on the checkbox that says add memo to matching transactions, if you click that, then you will see, you will get the original bank memo plus appended the additional bank memo. That to me is game changer. Why? Because when I create something using the rules, and I cover this in my banking class, we can use different things, different texts that we put in there, so we can do searches and filters after the fact. So there are some additional tools you can have by just adding text, appending text to the original bank text anytime a transaction is created by a rule, especially for the transactions that are created automatically. I do type special things in there so I can quickly create reports of things are being categorized automatically. So I know what I need to monitor first. Okay, so I'm gonna look at things that were categorized automatically first because I know no human had the ability to change something. Generally, if the rule is well put together, you don't have an issue. Things get categorized correctly. But again, appending that additional memo, to me, it's huge. I love it. The other really cool feature, and again, this is the one that if I don't tell you about it, you won't notice that it's there. You can create a rule that excludes a transaction. Now, generally, I don't like excluding transactions because it will give me an issue when it comes to bank reconciliations. But I know that many people have issues with payments from a bank to a credit card, payments from a bank to another bank, basically with transfers. And many people have the issue where they end up creating both sides of the transaction of a transfer, and it creates duplicates, and it gives them issues when it comes to reconciling the bank account. Again, something we cover, that issue we cover in my banking course. However, if you want to exclude from a particular side, a particular type of transaction, you can actually create a rule to automatically exclude it. So again, once you get really savvy with the rules, you'll start using the exclude one as well. So it's something that is very subtle in there. Most people won't even notice it unless somebody points it out to them. You can create a rule that exclude a transaction. Exclude means it doesn't get posted into your books from bank feeds. And generally, you exclude things that are going to cause duplicates. That's the type of stuff you exclude, right? So if you got some deposits that really are going to be driven by by some app, right? That's bringing the deposits from some sort of e-commerce platform. And then the way the banks brings it is confusing, but it's more clear the way the app brings it. Then you want to exclude those deposits, those type of deposits from it. Again, every circumstance is different in which how you would use that tool, but it's awesome. I love the fact that they added that. The other one that I really love, I think this is game changer too, and this is available in all versions as well, is you can quickly preview how you have used that category before and then make a decision on how to categorize that particular one based on past transactions, all within bank feeds. Okay, that's hard to explain, much easier to illustrate. So I'm going to open up QuickBooks here. I'm going to go into banking. And we'll take a look at transaction over here. And I'm just going to illustrate this for you. Okay, I'm going to take a vendor that I use a lot. Okay, so let's say Apple. Okay, so I'm gonna categorize one transaction as, let's say, dues and subscriptions. Okay, then I'm gonna take this other transaction from Apple. Let's see if I got a big one. I got this one for $89, and I'm gonna call this one office supplies. Let's put it under supplies. Okay, so what happens? I got a vendor that was used in more than one account when categorizing. So when it comes to categorizing the next transaction, and where is it? Okay, it's not showing on this version, but there's a little button here that says, let me see if I can override it to make it work. Again, I don't know why they include this in some versions of QuickBooks and not others. I'm gonna get rid of the enabled categorization, see if that does that. No, it's not. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the slides and show you that. So there's a little button here that they added, and again, I don't know why they added in some versions and not in others, that says categorization history. And when you click on that, you will have a little screen on the right that tells you when it was used, in what dollar amounts of transactions, and then based on the history, you can choose it. Again, I have a different QuickBooks file that has it. I don't know why the live one that I had didn't do it, but so if you do see categorization history on them, you know exactly what I mean by them. Again, don't know why this one in particular doesn't. I honestly don't want to spend too much time figuring out why not. Okay, so we'll do that. And again, you gotta think into it for doing this to us, right? Some QuickBooks files have some features, some don't. So for the ones that do have it, I don't think there's a way to turn this off or on. You will just have it or not have it. You know exactly what it looks like and what it's supposed to do. Okay. This other feature, and we mentioned this before, but it causes a lot of confusion. They added default expense account to a vendor. Okay. So I'm going to go to my vendors. I'm going to go into, let's go into expenses and vendors. And I'm going to pull up Apple. Okay. I'm going to open up, go to edit here. And then I'm going to make the default category for Apple. I mean, just to make things complicated here, I'm going to make it advertising expense. So the default category for Apple is advertising expense. So when you go in there and you choose this, by default, you're going to assume that when you go into banking and an Apple transaction comes up, it should put it into the advertising. It doesn't. And the reason why it doesn't is because banking is going to be different. Banking is going to be different than default categorization. Default categorization only works when you're creating the transaction manually. So if I go click on expense and I type here Apple, okay, QuickBooks will actually, there is another setting I need to turn off. So it's actually pretty interesting too. So I'm going to go into the gear menu and accountant settings. And then there is a setting where you tell QuickBooks to do the same exact thing that it did before. Don't remember exactly where it is. It's probably under advanced. And it's something that says, you know, kind of duplicate the last thing you did before. Let's see if I remember exactly where that is. Right here. So pre-fill forms with previously entered content. I'm going to turn that off because I hate that, by the way. You should always turn that off, independent on what I'm trying to do with this webinar. Always turn that off. And then I'm going to go back and go to expense. I'm going to type Apple. And it will default to advertising expense, right? The reason for that is because I set it up as the default account. The other thing, it wasn't working last time I checked, but we'll go check right now to see if it actually works in the check register. So if I go into the check register, it wasn't working last time. Let's see if it does this time magically. I'm going to go and create a new transaction. I scroll all the way down. I'm going to create a new transaction. I don't know why my new transaction screen is not here. Let me try it from maybe the credit card. Okay. Okay, let's do it from here. So I'm going to go to add a credit card expense. I'm going to go to CC expense. I'm going to type Apple. And the category doesn't show up. So the default expense account that you see on their vendors, we'll go back to that. Vendors, and let's go back to Apple. It's at this point it's a new feature. It's a little bit useless. One, because it only works when creating a regular transaction, not in the check register, not in banking. Which, by the way, I agree that it shouldn't work in banking. I like the way banking works as is. But the other problem with this is you could only, I guess in the past, you could only choose expense accounts. And now you can choose cost of goods sold account. So they did fix that. So we can pick cost of goods sold accounts, but you can't you can't add any income accounts, any other expense accounts, any other income accounts, any asset accounts, any liability accounts, any equity accounts, which is fine. Logically, a default expense account should be an expense. They did add cost of goods sold, which is awesome. It wasn't working before, so that was sort of a secret little fix that they did to it, but you still can't add an income account or an asset account or something like that, which, by the way, I think it makes sense anyway. But honestly, in my opinion, anytime you give me a drop-down menu with my chart of accounts, as an accountant, I would love to see my whole chart of accounts. Let me make the decision, right? And whether or not that's correct or not. But for end users, I would totally get why you would limit that to only expense accounts. And now that they added cost of goods sold, it's a little bit more complete. Okay, so something to mention. Again, these are these little things that if somebody doesn't mention them to you, you don't even know that they're there. All right, let's talk about the universal search widget. This is, again, something small, something that most of you won't even notice. You're using it, and it's there. It's a delighter. It makes your job faster, but you didn't even know there was actually a programmer and a team in charge of making sure these things get updated. So what did they add? They added a copy button so you can quickly duplicate transactions on the fly. That's awesome. They also added what's called an and Boolean search, which means when you write two words separate by a space or a word and a number, it would search the words and the number in two different lines. Okay? So for example, if I type pump and 800, it's going to find anything that has a vendor name of pump or a customer name of pump or a description of pump, and also anything that's 800, 80,000, 800,000, that sort of thing. Okay? So it's really, really cool. You can search two words and it'll find those two words as an and search, not an on or search. The other cool thing is you can create invoices and bills on the fly if you search for a contact. The other thing that's pretty cool, if you type the word create, it will give you a list of all the transactions you can create. Again, if you're doing a lot of things in the search and you want to save the time to navigate to the new button that create an invoice, you can type create invoice and get there. Again, we could argue on whether it's faster to click on invoice or click on create, but it's there as an option, which I love too. It's what they call the jump to options. For example, the chart of accounts. If I want to go into the chart of accounts and I start typing chart of accounts, you would see that in there. The other really neat thing is if the transaction is tagged, if it has a tag and you search for a tag, it will give you a quick link to go into the tagged transactions search. And my favorite is it will also search inside of a transaction memo. It won't search on message on invoice, and it won't search on a line item, but it will search on the transaction memo. So if you put something like the word needs, like I do that all the time, needs confirmation, needs document, needs a receipt, need to call, need to confirm, right? I do that all the time. What I can do is I can do a search for need and it will give me all the transactions that have that in there. We'll do that. So an example of that real quick. So I'm going to go up here to the search box and I'll type create so you can see. Okay. And then there's all my transactions, transfer, check, invoice, everything's in there. Okay. If I type the word need, okay, there's 3 transactions that have need in the text. If I click on any of them, you're going to see that there's need here in message on statement, which is the transaction memo. Okay. So it's pretty awesome. And once again, if you're trying to get the slides, there's a link in the top right of the screen that tells you where the slides are, and that's also the link is also in the chat box. Okay, so you got all those searches. You want to try them; they're really, really cool. The duplicate, believe it or not, those are actually really, really valuable. So the duplicates would do something like, let's say for example, I'm going to search for this customer called Bruce Anderson. Okay, so I'm in my regular homepage and I come up here and I type the word Bruce. Okay, and it's gonna find my contact Bruce. If I want to create a new invoice for Bruce, I can click on create invoice and it goes to the create screen, it creates and it puts the customer right away. That's awesome. That's amazing. Again, this is Intuit noticing how often the search box is being used. And again, trying to consolidate, your focus on one area. If you're doing that search box quite a bit and you can do more functions from it, I think it will speed up your work. The other thing is, let me look for a particular vendor. Let me go into a particular vendor that would have a bill. So let's do Anderson right here. Oh, actually, let's do a different one. Let's do Kaler's Hardware. So I'm going to go back into the dashboard. I'm going to go here. I'm going to type Kaler. Okay. And because Kaler is a vendor, then the quick create button would be create bill. The other thing you can do is, hey, I got another bill from Kaler that looks exactly like a previous bill I created. I can click on copy. And that will open up a brand new bill that's been duplicated. Okay. All right. So zoom this back in. Okay, now let's move on to QuickBooks Cash and Cash Flow. So the reason why it's two things is QuickBooks Cash and Cash Flow. The QuickBooks Cash account is a digital bank account. QuickBooks has a bank, I think it's called the Green Dot Bank, that is a partnership with Intuit, I assume, or maybe Intuit owns it. I don't know the mechanics of it, but I do know that it is a bank account dedicated to QuickBooks users. You will transfer the money from your regular bank account. You will just do an ACH transfer. I don't know if it's possible to send a check to them or to go somewhere physically to deposit the cash. I don't know if that's possible. Right now, from my test, you must have already an existing traditional bank account and transfer the money in there. Once you transfer the money in there, you will have the ability to do your bill pay, ACH bill pay. You will have a debit card, so you'll be able to use it like a regular bank account. But the big feature, the big differentiator is the ability to have this concept of envelopes. So what envelopes do is, imagine a bank account with subcategories, allows you to, let's say, reserve the money. And when you make expenditures, you make them from that expenditure so you can know how much you spent for that predetermined category. Best way to think of this, think of it as a budget that's bank driven instead of financial statement driven. Okay. So for end users that are not of an accounting background, that don't understand or don't like or don't work with the concept of budgets, this will be the closest thing to it, because a lot of homes, a lot of individual financial planning, they'll create envelopes, right, to personally lay away or save money for a particular concept, right? They'll, the paycheck comes in for $5,000 or whatever, and they'll put $1,000 away for food, $2,000 away for the rent, $3,000 away for whatever, $1,000 away for saving, and it goes into physical envelopes like in the real world. And then you can only spend from there. That way you limit yourself from spending money that's saved for something else. That's what QuickBooks Cash is trying to replicate. Again, maybe not something that a large company would do, but a smaller self-employed individual would appreciate this process very much. Now, will this work in the long run? It depends on the adoption. I mean, how many people will have a QuickBooks Cash account and only a QuickBooks Cash account? That's remained to be seen. I think a lot of people are going to get the QuickBooks Cash account. They're going to keep their traditional bank account. And because they have some money in the traditional bank account, not all in QuickBooks Cash, this envelope system is going to break down. In my opinion, this only works if you have QuickBooks Cash and QuickBooks Cash only. The minute you insert other bank accounts, this is just not going to work. Okay. Again, it's just my opinion, just my speculation, but I love the direction that QuickBooks is going with in here, and the ability to pay ACH, get paid with ACH, get paid with a credit card. Intuit is going to be able to consolidate the transaction costs of all these transactions for QuickBooks Cash users. So get prepared to see very competitive rates in merchants and ACH, wire transfers, all that stuff for QuickBooks Cash customers, because that's going to be the only edge that they're going to be able to use to compete against traditional banks. Okay. The new cash flow screen, so not QuickBooks cash flow screen, has a couple of additions that are really, really cool. There's a cash flow overview, which basically gives you a list of all the balances across all the banks, but these are not the register balances. These are the online balances. Okay. So the difference between looking at a balance sheet, for example, which is going to give you your register balance, is this gives you an idea of all the money that's physically in your bank accounts at the moment. It would also project the money that's coming in based on open invoices and the money that's going out based on bills. When it comes to cash flow planning, most people don't create all their bills for the next 2 months, so it would be impossible for QuickBooks to know what is your money coming out. Money coming in with invoices, most people are really, really good at creating those invoices for future money cash flow in, but not so good about budgeting cash flow out. So what they did is they did something called balance projections. It's available in all versions of QuickBooks Online, which is awesome. And what cash flow projections does is they will look at your historical expenditure, and it will try to predict, which transactions might come in the future. Again, things that you don't have a bill for, right? So things you don't have a bill for. So it's going to create what may come in the future, again, based on history. Now I'm going to go ahead and open that up just so you can see it. So I'm going to go into cash flow and go into overview. And this is all the bank accounts that are connected. So these are all the balances across all, again, not the register balances, all the credit card balances, all the loan balances. Here's the money in and money out projection, again, based on actual invoices, based on actual bills. But you go here where it says planner, and we're going to scroll down, and you see here it says coming up. So these are all the ones that QuickBooks is projecting. None of these are in your register. QuickBooks is projecting that this is going to happen because every month it's been happening. So QuickBooks is going to create this whole slew of projected transactions in the future, which you can leave, you can edit, or you can remove. So QuickBooks will, try to guess what your cash flow is and try to guess maybe when you could run out of cash. Other thing you can do is here where it says overdue transactions. So anything that's overdue, you will go to update and tell it when you think these invoices are going to come due or these bills. So for example, I think this invoice will be paid May 13th. And I think that this bill, I will pay it. This is only for overdue, again, because it doesn't have a due date to go by. So I'm going to pay this on May 3rd. Okay, something like that. Then I click on done. So it takes that and then it puts it down into my projected expenses. That's what it does. So your cash flow graph can be updated. For example, let's say I'm going to spend let's say $400,000 next week on April 30th on my pension, for example. So I'm going to type here pension. There's no list of vendors or anything. This is just estimation. I'm going to put money out, and basically I'm creating a planned transaction only for cash flow planning. Click on save and then see what happens. Then it tells me right here, look, you're going to have a cash flow problem on this day because you're going to be short on cash. And then I can come in there and add an event. And then I think that on, let's say, May 13th, I'll put here customer A. Again, no drop down list. You don't have to be precise. This is just guesswork, really. Let's say I want to receive $390,000 from a customer. It's going to be money in. I click on save, and there you go. My cash flow projection gets saved. Again, it's as scientific as it could be. You know, when it comes to projection, that's always going to be guesswork. But you can use actual numbers, right? And you don't have to do this in Excel, in a spreadsheet. You can use real transactions. You can use guess transactions based on historical expense, and you can use some of the ones that you're projecting in here. So pretty cool. You can export this to Excel as well. So if you want to kind of see your cash flow report, you get to see the graph. This is the current balance in the bank. You get to see the graph, and it tells you exactly which month you're projecting to have a cash flow issue. If you do take your time and do this and go through this, you can provide amazing cash flow reports. You can create amazing cash flow reports. And that's, again, available for all users of QuickBooks. So that's actually pretty cool. Good job Intuit doing that. And this is probably just the beginning. I think it's something really exciting to look forward to. Other thing they added, which is really awesome, if you create a recurring invoice, again, you create a recurring invoice. You go into QuickBooks, create an invoice, and you make it recurring. And you put the checkbox that you want the customer to pay you via a credit card with your QuickBooks payments. Okay. So once that happens, when the customer gets the email to pay for the invoice, there's a little checkbox that says turn on monthly auto pay starting whenever. That's only if the invoice has been marked as recurring. So QuickBooks is smart enough to send this little option where the customer knows that this is an indefinitely recurring invoice, a monthly service. Your client can click turn on monthly auto pay, click on auto pay and set it and forget it. Okay. your customer will be paying you every single month until you cancel or delete that recurring invoice. Okay. A question I get, or I got last time we saw this, is how will my customer stop the auto pay? I don't have the answer to that. I don't know what mechanism there is to that. I know that if I stop creating the recurring invoices, the customer will stop paying automatically because there's no invoice to pay against. But I don't know how the customer would initiate that cancellation. And obviously, that could cause some angst because the customers are like, I'm not going to check that if I don't know how to uncheck it. Okay. All right. Let's go to a new time entry screen. This is something I don't like at all, something that Intuit is working on. I think that they have some grand idea in mind, but I think that they're slowing down the time entry process big time. So the traditional timesheet screen, you get to choose the employee, the date range. You got this chart that's wide open that allows you to pick each customer, the class, the description, and the hours. I loved the new, I didn't love the old timesheet screen, but compared to the new one, I love the old one. The new one looks like this. It's a really kind of cumbersome and cookie one for data entry. It's a lot prettier for displaying, for reporting, but for data entry is cumbersome. It does feel a lot slower. Now, this could be because they're trying to push people into QuickBooks Time, which is formerly T-Sheets. It could be because they have some grand design to unite the T-Sheets experience and the QuickBooks experience. But right now, at the moment, I find it cumbersome. I think it's slow. I think it takes longer than the old timesheet screen. So unfortunately, I don't like it. It's under beta mode. And I wish they would have a little checkbox where you can say, I don't want to participate in the beta. Give me the old school screen. But they don't have that yet. At least as of the date of this webinar, I've given Intuit direct feedback about how much I hate this screen. And they emailed me and they said, why did you hate it? And I told them why. And they said, okay. And then nothing happened. Okay. So I think that they should, hopefully, crossing my fingers, they'll add a button where you can opt out of that. But yeah, it's horrible. Okay. So I can show it to you, and it's not a big deal for new users. Okay, this is the old, okay, so this company has the old timesheet screen. But okay, so I'll show you. This is the old timesheet screen, right? This is a single activity screen, and this is the weekly timesheet. This is the one that I like, okay? My new file, I'm going to switch companies. I'm going to switch to a new company I created. And it also seems a little random which companies have it and which ones don't. I know that I converted the first file I'll show you, I converted from desktop. So maybe the desktop conversions are using the old mode and all the new ones are starting from scratch are using the new mode. Who knows? I'm going to do the weekly timesheet. Okay. And let me move to essentials on this account because there's no timesheets on simple start for some strange reason. And I'll close this out. Sure. Let's do the new time entry. Well, never mind. So it's as inconsistent as it gets. So I know for a fact that some of you have seen the new screen. Again, totally random which companies have the old screen and the new screen. It's driving me crazy trying to keep track of which ones have it and which ones don't. This specific screenshot, I literally took it from the same company that I'm showing you. So who knows how they are figuring out which ones get the new screen or the old screen. In my opinion, they should go back to the old screen. But if you do have the new screen, hopefully you're watching this 3, 4, 5 months later and it's no longer an issue. Currently, it's a very slow process. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about the new QBO to QuickBooks Desktop export workflow. This one I'm going to say nothing but good things about. So at some point at the beginning of the year, Intuit decided to discontinue the old process, let's call it that, to go from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online to QuickBooks Desktop. They got a lot of blowback. I literally emailed the CEO and I said, this is BS. Okay. Not that my email cost the solution, but at least I raised it up immediately because you cannot kill the ability from go to QBO to QuickBooks Desktop for a plethora of reasons, right? Some people will go to enterprise and will need the QuickBooks Online data. Some people will close down their company and they want to have a permanent database. At least QuickBooks Desktop allows you to do that. There's just no reason why Intuit would discontinue QBO to QuickBooks Desktop. So they quickly worked on a new tool. And the experience is very similar. Now, this is hidden from the end users, so you must know the URL. I put the URL on the slide. So if you need to do a QuickBooks Online to QuickBooks Desktop conversion, you want to use the specific URL that's in this slide. So you're going to copy and paste that URL on top of the screen. Then it's going to show you an overview. You're going to click on Next. You're going to download a tool. And this is only for PC, Windows, by the way. So you're going to download a tool, which you're going to install in your computer. Then you're going to, it's going to send you an email once it's done creating the conversion. And you're going to go back into the screen using the same link that's right there on the bottom of the slide. You're going to copy and paste that in there. It's going to take you back into the screen. So the second time around, after you download the tool and initiate the export, it will take you to a screen saying, all right, file's ready to download. You're going to click on continue to download. You're going to download a file into your computer, a QBXML file. You're going to save it into your computer somewhere. You're going to launch the new tool. It's called the QuickBooks Desktop Migration Tool. You're going to click on Browse. You're going to select the file. You're going to click on Import. It's going to ask you where would you like to save your QuickBooks file. You give it a name, and then you just wait. It will launch QuickBooks Desktop, and it will go through the process, and it will create the file for you in QuickBooks Desktop. It's better than the old experience, so I'm kind of glad that they kind of killed it and it wasn't working. It was related to ActiveX, so for the nerds that are watching this, they're like, oh, why was it not working? The ActiveX module was discontinued, and it was all ActiveX programmed. So the developers got hard at work and they created a QuickBooks tool that could do the importing from online to desktop. So I love the new tool. It works really well. It works really fast, and it's not as glitchy as before. So I'm going to give 2 thumbs up to Intuit for that. All right, so let's move on to limits on tags. Now, when tags first came out, and I believe that was like maybe February of last year, when tags officially came out, tags are available across all versions of QuickBooks. Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, Advanced, not desktop, only online. Tags became the quasi-replacement or potential replacement for locations and classes. As you may know, or you may not know, QuickBooks Online created a limit for QuickBooks Online Plus users of how many classes and locations you can have. The limit is 40. So a lot of QuickBooks Online Plus users stop using classes, start using tags as a way to work around the 40 item or the 40 class and location limitation. So what they did is they also curtailed tags on the QuickBooks Plus side, and they're limiting it to at most 40 tag groups. Now, a tag group is more powerful than a single class or a single location, because a class is one tag group. A location is one tag group. So even with the 40 limitation, which I see what they're attempting to do, but even with the 40 limitation, you're going to be completely fine. So I saw exactly what Intuit was trying to do. They're trying to kind of create a hard limit on that 40, but because you have a total of 300 actual tags that you can do, the 40 tag group is really not a problem. And I actually haven't had any clients, even my biggest clients, that need more than 40 tags. So interesting that they did that. It's novel, it's new, but and I understand why they're doing it, because they want their advanced version to be the one that has the unlimited. They want to limit that 40 was a number that they came up with for limiting classes and locations. So obviously they added the tags as well. More interesting than useful, that piece of information. But again, it's novel from the last time I've done webinars. Now, they officially removed from like every version of QuickBooks Online access to the custom summary report. They probably started doing this 2 years ago. This report is a report that Intuit created a while ago. They never did anything additional to that. Maybe it was creating confusion. They repulled it. They removed it from the search. So if you go into the reports screen right now, and we go into Let's do that now. So if I go into reports and I type custom summary, you're not going to be able to find it. However, if you know the URL, which I'm kind of glad that they kept the report, not the path to it, but they kept the report. But if you know the actual URL, which you can get from the slides, you can still access the custom summary report. So technically this is not new or news, but since so many people ask me about the custom summary report or don't know about it, I want to mention it one more time. Okay. So the custom summary report, which you will copy and paste into it, allows you to do summary transactions with rows and columns. So for example, if I wanted to do, let's say vendors under the columns, and let's say products and services, let's do balance sheet under the rows. Click on run report. Maybe not a good example. Let's do a different style. Let's do customers in the let's do customers in the columns, and then let's do income statement in the rows, and click on run report. Okay, let me try this again. I'm gonna paste the report again so it pops up. Again, you need to have that, and you need to most of the time do it on the pop-up. So I'm gonna do customers and then rows income statement. I'll click on run report. I'm gonna do it with vendors because this company file. Actually, do I even have any data in this company file? That could be my fault. Sorry about that. This is not a good one. I would have vendors. Yes, I will have vendors in this company file because I did the banking thing. So let's do it. Let's do it that way. So let's do columns vendors, and let's do rows income statement. I click on run reports, and all. Okay, let me switch. I'm gonna switch over to the other company. Sorry about that. When you're doing this live, you forget which company you're working on. Let's do one that I know has a lot of data in it. So let me load that up again. I'm going to copy and paste that URL. And let's do columns, customers, rows. Let's do classes. Click on run report. There we go. So here's a report that takes, customers on the columns, classes on the rows. You can also do it the other way. So we can do classes in the top and then customers in the bottom. Okay. So you get, and let's do all dates. So you get a nice little chart. I'm going to hit collapse here. You get a nice little chart of all the sales by customer with classes across. Right now, there's no filters. So this is going to show both income and expenses. I can go here and let's say only show my cost of goods sold. So I can see my direct costs by customer, by class. Click on run report. Yeah. So if you get that error, you just have to copy and paste the URL again. Again, this is a report that's hanging by a thread. Okay, one of my favorite reports. So we're doing columns, classes, rows, customers, and then the filter here, we're gonna do, let's say, only cost of goods sold. Click on run report. So now you get, let me just hit collapse. Now you get my direct cost of goods sold by customer with classes on top. So it's really, really interesting what this report can do. Again, something that QuickBooks started doing, didn't really do much to improve it. It does require a lot of improvements, but it's still there and it can still do some of those reports that we would need. So check it out. That URL is still in effect. You have to manually copy and paste that URL, but you no longer will be able to find it in the traditional search. Okay. Let's talk about bill pay, and this is a really big deal because like traditional QuickBooks stuff, you're going to have some files that have something, some files that have others. Old files that activated bill pay are probably going to have bill.com integrated into it. New files that activate bill pay are going to have Melio or Melio. Not sure what the right pronunciation of that. And the way you activate a Melio is when you create a bill, you're going to click on Save and Schedule Payment. It's going to open up the bill pay screen, and then it will give you the ability to choose which bank account you want to pay digitally. Okay, so this will do a bill payment. This is an ACH bill payment, paying your bills via ACH, and it uses the Melio platform. But it's all inside QuickBooks Online. Okay, you get to choose the date where the payment is going to be effective as of. You get to add a memo. Okay, and this is if they end up printing a check and not do ACH, they will actually print that in the check. And then you get a last confirmation page, address, all that stuff that you need. And then it tells you what the transaction fee is. Melio right now is free for ACH, and they charge you if you're going to be using a credit card to pay your vendor. And that's how Melio makes money. I assume that's the only business model that they have. And this is not Intuit QuickBooks, it's a separate third-party app. So we go to confirm and schedule payment, and then it will mark your bill as paid. Now there's this concept called Purple Melio, which is the actual Melio website. So if you go to meliopayments.com, QuickBooks will integrate with this third-party app, and you can manage payments via Melio as well. Melio is a relatively new company, but they've done this great partnership with Intuit to add bill payments straight inside from QuickBooks Online. But you can also have this bill.com style money request and money pay platform, and anything you do in QuickBooks, it will automatically move to Melio, and everything you do in Melio that's linked to a QuickBooks transaction will update into QuickBooks, right? So it's really, really cool. It's a sort of a seamless interaction between a third-party app like Melio and QuickBooks Online. All right, so let's move on to QuickBooks Online advanced only features. So everything I mentioned before is across all versions of QuickBooks. Some are in beta mode, some are only available in certain company files. I recognize that. But generally speaking, once it propagates throughout all of QuickBooks, it will be across all versions. What I'm about to talk to you about now, it's only in advanced edition. Okay? So let's start with premium apps. So Intuit created a particular partnership with a couple of companies. Salesforce, HubSpot, Bill.com, right, which it competes with Melio. Fathom, which it's built into QuickBooks Online Advanced. Lean Law, QuickBooks Time, okay, and which is basically T-Sheets, and Docusign. Now they're going to add more and more of these apps. These apps are not free. It doesn't mean that because they have QBO Advanced integration, doesn't mean the apps will be free, with the exception of Fathom. Fathom is free, okay, from this list. It's the only one that's free, okay? Let's talk about Docusign. I particularly like, I'm a Docusign user, so I'm going to show you what that experience looks like through screenshots. So we're going to go ahead and enable Docusign. Again, only available with Advanced, and you have to buy Docusign separately, but you're going to add Docusign. And then when you create an estimate, you'll be able to send the estimate via Docusign for the customer to approve. Once you click on Save and Send with Docusign, it will take you to the Docusign website, which you need to link with your account. You're going to create a Docusign account, and you'll be able to pick where the customer needs to sign, what checkboxes they need to put. You can really customize the experience. So they're going to initial here, sign here, put a date here. And after that's done, you're going to click on Send. The customer is going to get an email saying, hey, you got an estimate that you need to approve. They will open it. They will be able to digitally sign it, digitally initial it, whatever it is. And then you get an email saying that it was done. And then back in QuickBooks, you're going to get a little tag on top of the estimate number that says Manage in Docusign, and you'll be able to go look at the document in Docusign. Now, something that I was very disappointed at, because when they say deep integration, I'm expecting deep integration. This is more like 1 foot in integration. What it doesn't do is it doesn't take a PDF signed copy of the estimate and bring it into my attachments and attach it to the estimate. It doesn't do that, which again, that would be deep integration. And what it also doesn't do, which is a big disappointment from my perspective, is the estimate will stay in pending mode. It won't switch the estimate to approved. You still have to switch it to approved or convert it to an invoice automatically. So It would be really cool. And again, if anybody from Intuit or Docusign is watching this, it would be really neat if you can have a setting where you can automate, say, look, if the customer signs, automatically convert it into an invoice. Or if the document signs, automatically convert it into an invoice, send the customer the invoice so they can pay. So I think it's an awesome start to get the customer to sign via Docusign, but that workflow of, okay, what happens to the estimate afterwards, to me, it's missing. And that's a big opportunity to have with that. Now, again, as I said, none of these apps, or most of these apps, are not free. You actually have to go buy Docusign, right? It's not like they added signature capture into QuickBooks Online. They didn't do that. They added the ability to integrate your existing Docusign account with QuickBooks Online. Okay, so I pay $25 a month for Docusign, so be able to have unlimited signatures in there. So something to think about. If you already are a Docusign user, you can have those estimates signed. Is the only thing I see interacting with Docusign. Let's talk about user roles. They added a new feature where you can create a user that only has access into selling from or with specific locations. Okay, so if you create a user that only has access to create invoices for California or New Jersey or whatever, when you create the invoice, you will only have option to use those. So you can't have a user that doesn't work in that location inadvertently change an invoice to add their location to it or something like that. That's what's really cool about this. It limits the function to that user only working on that location. Now, unfortunately, that's only for sales for the moment, but I think it's a great start to add locations to the permission structure of QuickBooks Online Advanced. The other thing, and certain QuickBooks files will have that, when you start creating your customer structure, you're now going to see full access, view, create, edit, delete. So when you create this user permission structure, you will be able to, and I don't know when this is going to be available, but it's very, very soon, because it's already showing up in a couple of the screens, where you can pick, okay, this user can only create invoices but can delete them. This user can create and edit invoices but can delete them. This user can only view invoices or only view estimates. So this is a really, really cool thing coming up. And again, getting closer to getting that QuickBooks Online Advanced, getting closer to this enterprise level feature set. It's very far away, but at least it's very obvious that they're getting close. Okay. The next feature worth talking about is Google Sheets in the import workflow for importing customers, vendors, chart of accounts, and item import. So if you got a list of customers in Google Sheet, you can connect it to your Google Sheets account and you can bring all those customers in. Really cool. It works really well. I know a lot of people are using Chromebooks. They don't have Excel physically in their computer because you can't. And Google Sheets is the only way you can have a spreadsheet. And this is actually a great alternative for bringing data into it. The next level for this would be, and it's not available yet, but it would be, if you can import invoices and bills and sales receipts from Google Sheets. That would be a real game changer, because you can create some really cool and interesting things with Zapier or some other automation tools, and you could really integrate things that don't really have an integration tool simply by going from a Google spreadsheet into QuickBooks. So for the time being, this is something you trigger, you select the sheet, you can import customers, vendors, chart of accounts, or items, right? Not at the same time, each one separately, by connecting a Google Sheet. But the next level would be, and I don't think it's going to take long until they realize the big opportunity they have here, is importing transactions from a Google Sheet. That would be amazing. That would really, really be a game changer for QuickBooks Online Advanced. Next thing they added was estimate level workflow reminders. So really, really cool. You can have the workflows interact with estimates, not just with invoices. So before, it was pretty much invoices and payments. Now you can interact with estimates as well. So basically what you can do is you can say, look, if an estimate hasn't been approved, it's still in pending status, go ahead and send a client another copy of the estimate as a reminder. That's basically what it is. So it's not just open invoices, also open and pending estimates. Okay. Send the client an email, send the company an email to remind the salesperson to do it, send a push notification. Push notification means if you're using the phone app, it will actually pop up in the phone app saying, hey, by the way, this estimate has not been converted to an invoice. This estimate is still pending. So I love the fact that you can also start customizing the phone experience, the mobile experience with QuickBooks Online as well. So I love the direction that it's going to. Probably not enough to sell me on, hey, I should go to QuickBooks Online Advanced because of this one thing, but I think they're getting closer and closer, adding these customizable workflows. The last thing we're going to talk about is a new feature or an updated feature in QuickBooks Online Accountant. They added 2 little upgrades to month-end review. One, any AR and AP that's more than 90 days late is going to show up in your month-end review. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the month-end review, you might want to go check it out. Before, it didn't have, late, right, or overdue AP and AR. Now you can see them because if you're doing a monthly review, some of the things you might want to do is, hey, what's going on with this AR? What's going on with this AP? And the other thing they added, which is pretty cool, is any undeposited funds that have not been converted into a deposit. So if you got things still hanging on your deposited funds, it's also part of your workflow for your month-end review. Something you should be looking at anyway, but if you're an accountant and you're doing reviews for your clients, you might want to be reminded to look into that undeposited funds account. And that's it. That's 100 minutes worth of probably 100 updates, QuickBooks Online in the last 6 months. If you want to attend the bank feeds, bank reconciliations course, we'll start recording tomorrow, April 23rd, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you're watching this after April 23rd, you can purchase the course and watch the recording. What's unique about this course, different than any other course you've taken, is I'm going to do bank feeds for you using an actual bank statement and credit card statement. And I'm going to give you a copy of the bank statement and credit card statement so you can do the same thing on your screen. A lot of people watching this are already power users. They know what they're doing. But if anybody wants to learn banking and bank reconciliation using real statements, this will probably be one of the only few places where you can get this in a course. And I've also lowered the course to $100. I used to sell it for $200. There's the link in the slides if you want to access that. Again, if there's something I missed, something that wasn't clear, there's my email address. Any feedback, that will go to that email address. The recording will be posted into YouTube within the next couple of hours. So you will have access to that as well. I will send you an email and a survey at the end. That's it for me. I'm going to go ahead and log out. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.